This is Yonder Radio, Rural Conversations with National Reach. My name is Jared Iwi. This is our third episode, which means they had us back, and there's no greater honor. Here are some of the things coming up. Trivia throughout the hour, so we have that. A hopeful story from Wisconsin about intergenerational care. And also, we're going to float down the Hudson River and talk about the state of that major aquatic thoroughfare. But first, before we get there, hailing from the Daily Yonder newsroom, it's the Daily Yonder news editor with rural headlines, Jan Podolsky. Welcome, Jan.
Hi, it's good to hear you, Jared.
Well, the best way to get news is through the soothing vocals of Jan Podolsky, and now he delivers. What's happening with the USDA?
So the first story comes from Politico, and it's about the increasing land capital and market access program from the Agriculture Department. The program is being slashed, funded by the American Rescue Plan Act. It's about $300 million that were dedicated to about 50 projects across the country, 49 of which are now halted. Those are all addressing land access issues facing Black, immigrant, indigenous farmers, veterans, and other underrepresented groups. According to Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins, this is all under the banner of fighting DEI.
And then from Axios, the SAVE Act. Tell us more. Just a quick primer on what this is.
SAVE Act, or Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, is this legislation that President Trump is pushing hard for. And Axios did a quick analysis looking at how this legislation could affect voters in America. This time they're looking at driving times to register to vote. And according to Axios, more than 5 million voting age Americans would have to drive an estimated hour or more to present their citizenship documents to register to vote. Now, an average time for an American is about 20 minutes. For rural Americans in the West, it more than doubles to 49 minutes. What's worrisome is that the little detail here within SAVE Act, we are not exactly told who the appropriate voting official is, which could further complicate, where you can go and present those documents.
So there's still some mystery.
Oh, yeah.
High Country News and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. What's the latest?
Yes, a quick report from High Country News. In a recent congressional hearing about the funding for indigenous communities for the fiscal year 2027, Mark Maccaro, president of the National Congress of American Indians, noted that the Bureau of Indian Affairs is facing yet another round of significant overhaul and staff cuts that comes already on the back of a year of significant reorganizing at the Department of the Interior. According to the Government Accountability Office, the Bureau of Indian Affairs has lost 13% of its workforce since January 2025. Tribal leaders are worried that it will further impact services provided to the tribes. According to Maccaro, those changes are not being done in consultation with the tribal nations, so that's another layer of worry there.
Jan Podolsky, the Daily Yonder news editor, he is swimming in this stuff, and he emerges with these stories for us. So thank you for that effort, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Jared.
Up next, we're going to hear from Daily Yonder reporter Madeline DeFigueiredo, who reported on an approach to healthcare that spans generations. In rural Walworth County, Wisconsin, a community group is charting a path for intergenerational care that involves putting child care and elder care in the same location. And research has shown it can improve well-being, social skills, and community connections. Madeline, welcome. And this story, I'm going to do it like the classic infomercial, where there's a terrible problem, and then your story helps fix it. In the county where you did the story in Wisconsin, they are really up against it with not enough daycare, not enough care for elder citizens. That's the big problem, and nationwide as well. But you're finding some answers within the community. Tell me more about this story.
So Walworth County is in southern Wisconsin, and they are facing pretty extreme caregiving shortages. Every single seat for a licensed caregiver is taken for child caregiving, and they're projecting major shortages for caregiving needs for older citizens in the coming years. So there's an existing center, the Lakeland Healthcare Center in Walworth County, and there's an established elder care center there, which has a vacant wing that's open right now. And the community is starting to ask questions about how can this space be used to address these caregiving shortages and create a space that addresses both of those needs simultaneously.
Am I wildly optimistic to think that intergenerational care is as rosy as it could be with multiple generations? You have grandparent figures who might need care but are also there for the youngest who could use a grandparental figure.
I don't think you're being too rosy. The research shows that it's a beneficial outcome for everybody. For children, it builds social skills, creates opportunities for intergenerational interaction. For older adults, it reduces loneliness, creates more opportunities for engagement and active brain health. And it's also good for what many people refer to as the sandwich generation, those who have both children that need care and also aging parents that need care. I talk to people who live in this county who drive over an hour to get from their parents' nursing home to their child's daycare center. So if they're trying to see their parents on the same day they have to pick up their child from daycare, there's a huge time commitment. And if you're a working parent or if you have other commitments, it's really hard. And being able to make a space where all that is possible within a matter of steps, not miles, I think is going to be transformational for so many.
How far are they into this program?
It's still early days. The hall has now been vacant for about 7 years. The Groundswell Collective, which is the community organization in southern Wisconsin that has been leading this effort, just successfully got the county to agree to a feasibility study, which essentially means that now there's going to actually be a tangible next step where the county will evaluate the possibility of turning this vacant wing into a child care center. It doesn't mean that there are any guarantees, but it's a really meaningful step forward.
So you have this organization, the Groundswell Collective. That sounds like a positive upheaval. Did you, as a reporter, come away with that same sensation?
Absolutely. I will say that one of the most exciting parts of this reporting for me was being inspired by the intergenerational organizing that was happening to bring this intergenerational care to fruition. And I talked to folks who were in their 60s and 70s and planning their own care and aging. And I talked to university students. I talked to young parents who were navigating their own childcare needs. And all of those folks are coming together and pushing for this collectively. And I think it's just a testament to the power of rural organizing to change the landscape of resources for families across the community. I think this is an issue that many rural communities are facing. I don't think that Walworth County is alone in it. Other communities have done similar things where there are shared intergenerational care spaces. And I think Walworth County is trying to be the next space to do that and then hopefully create a precedent for other local communities to follow.
Well, Madeline DeFigueiredo, traveling the country to find awesome stories like this, perhaps blueprints for the rest of the country. Thank you so much for your time and your reporting.
Thanks so much, Jared. Great to be here.
That was Madeline DeFigueiredo, a reporter with the Daily Yonder. Find her story and more rural news at dailyyonder.com.
Coyote on the road, streetlight burning low.
And now we are heading to the prairie of South Dakota with musician Eliza Blue. My guest right now is Eliza Blue, the author of Accidental Rancher, Little Pasture on the Prairie. You are a television host, you are a musician, and a podcaster. There's this media ecosystem you've created telling the story through music and other media about your experience.
It's been a really interesting experience. I was a touring musician before I moved here, and so spent my time driving around, playing shows all over the place. And then suddenly here I was in a place where cattle outnumber people. I think it's 16-1, and our population density is for Perkins County is 1 person per square mile. I just started writing about it, and it seeped into my music as well. And just everything that happened was noteworthy because it was so different than where I'd come from. When I got here and started to rekindle a relationship that I think is part of like sort of the ancestral knowledge of like being land-based, of knowing where your food comes, of knowing the place that you live intimately. When I came here, as that started to unfold for me, it became clear like, oh, this is the story I'm meant to tell and share, because I do think that there is a longing within all of us, like it's part of our human nature to want to live in community.
Light hung in a bright pool, left me feeling grateful. I was born in a dark hollow.
So you had these conversations and you turned them into song.
There are 6 songs based on conversations that I got to be part of as part of the Beyond the Clock podcast, and then the online conversations that they curate as well. And I turned them into song, and that was, oh man, just one of the coolest and craziest experiences. I'd never done anything like that before, to try to write a song based on a conversation.
Tell me your sorrow, I'll tell you mine.
A lot of what came out of those conversations were how to confront big challenges, like how, as artists, were people looking at their communities or looking to their communities or looking to their creative practice for resilience and for ways to continue to show up in the world with love and compassion and empathy. How were they doing that? In some ways, it felt like the songs were this distillation of wisdom from these 5 really, really amazing culture bearers and arts workers.
Slow rivering home sounds like passing through. It's a phrase I've never heard, but I feel like I'm like a Venetian boat dude just going through the neighborhood. But it makes me want to meet each of these people. I hope they're social, because each song I'm like, okay, I want to meet Lacey. Eliza just put her vocals out there for her and is telling this story.
'Cause we are born to rise up. We are born to rise up.
And so it's so cool to hear how this came about, and they trusted you to sing a song.
I hope they feel like I represented them well. And when I was writing, and I think that this is maybe why the songs came out as easily as they did, because without meaning to, the frame that I wrote out of was that I wanted each of them to be a love song to that person, because I was so moved in the conversations by the work that these artists are doing in their communities, just really, really trying to make the world a better place and succeeding, I would say.
Well, it's an incredible motivational structure. Like, if you do enough for your community, Eliza will write and sing a song for you. Well, Eliza, we better go. This has been awesome. I feel like I'm in your living room looking out the window onto western South Dakota, just enjoying a conversation with some coffee and some cookies, as is recommended how you read your book, I saw.
That is how it's been recommended,
Yes.
yes.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And tell me your sorrow, I'll tell you mine. The day's getting darker, the night will come soon.
That was Eliza Blue, musician, writer, and rancher living on the South Dakota prairie. Every episode of Yonder Radio ends with rural trivia. Throughout the episode, we'll be dropping hints so you can make guesses about the trivia topic of the week. Today's first hint is that this event was first held in front of 250 spectators in Reno, Nevada in 1976. Last year, over 10,000 people attended. We'll have the answer later in the show, and we're also going to take a little float down the Hudson River. That's all coming up on Yonder Radio. Well, it's Yonder Radio, and we appreciate you being here. My name is Jared Ewey, and I am the host. These are rural conversations with national reach, and something that is reaching everyone across the nation is a new reality TV show called Suddenly Amish. It's on TLC, and it follows 6 quote-unquote outsiders who take a leap into Amish life in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They leave behind their digital worlds and their modern-day comforts, and Daily Yonder culture reporters Anya Patron-Slepian and Susanna Brown break down the rural implications of the new show, Suddenly Amish.
TLC has a new offering for us. It's called Suddenly Amish. Anya, can you tell us what's the deal with this reality TV show?
Well, first of all, it is a train wreck and a disaster, and I want to get that right up front.
Completely and totally absurd.
About as silly and as goofy and as reality TV as it gets. This is the latest show in a long line of shows that are concerned with the Amish. They're all made by the same production company, Hot Stakes Production. So if you've ever heard of Breaking Amish or Amish Mafia, this is the same people doing this. The new show, Suddenly Amish, is about 6 outsiders, or as the Amish call them, English, trying to join the Amish community.
Right. And the reason that they're being brought in is supposedly that the community, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the Amish community, they claim that the community is dying out.
Our population is shrinking. So I will be inviting people in from the outside in hopes of repopulating the church.
Of course, what they're ignoring is the fact that the Amish population is actually one of the fastest growing populations in the United States. The population has more than doubled since the year 2000.
So it seems like that's the first of what I'm sure you will inform us are many falsehoods of this show.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not enough of an Amish expert to catch all of them, but I've certainly caught a few.
And reality TV we know to not be a source of truth, an incredibly accurate medium.
No.
But nevertheless, reality TV is a huge part of our media landscape.
It is. And, on the one hand, I think it's something that a lot of people dismiss because so much of it is so outrageous, so undignified. But I think it's important because it's a reflection of ourselves. I think it matters that there are so many people willing to tune in to watch the Kardashians every week. Whatever it is, people are watching it, and that means that it is speaking to them in some way, and that's worth considering, even if you don't think the quality of the content itself is very impressive, enjoyable, or worthwhile.
You're talking about the subgenre of the Amish, and there's also a large amount of reality TV that's focused on rural life in general. What are the trends you're seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of reality TV shows that are rural or have rural elements, and there have been really since the dawn of reality TV shows. What's really important about a lot of these shows is that they are in the most classic, lazy way possible, relying on rural stereotyping. And I think what's really interesting about the Amish shows is that they take that to the extreme, because if you think about your positive and your negative rural stereotypes, you have peaceful, idyllic, simple life. And on the other hand, you have backwards, no technology, conservative, judgmental, religious. The Amish shows sort of encompass all of that to the extreme. I mean, it's really backwards technologically because they don't have technology. They're the Amish. And they're really religious because it's a church. And they're really peaceful and really simple because they're wearing bonnets and singing hymns. And it's like everything you can think of as being the rural stereotype, the Amish are fulfilling that and more.
In the Amish world, we abstain from electricity, we abstain from cars.
We don't wear makeup or jewelry.
We work the fields, we go to church.
Tell me more about what is going on in Suddenly Amish with the Amish community.
Any reality TV show about the Amish has one really obvious, glaring problem, which is that people in Amish communities are not allowed to be on reality TV.
Yeah, a direct defiance of some of the most major things we understand the Amish community to believe in and stand for.
Right. So the vast majority of the time that somebody is supposed to be representing an Amish person on reality TV, they are in fact not an active member of the church. A little bit of internet sleuthing proves that the Amish hosts, the people who are introducing the English to the culture and helping them adapt, are former members of the church. If anything, James, who is the leader of the process and also the chief antagonist of the show, has been documenting all of his road trips on Instagram.
Not a very Amish thing to do.
Not a very Amish thing to do. The Amish inherently don't have representation of their own in mass media because, once again, they are not making mass media. So there's not really a chance to hear an authentic Amish voice, and instead what we get is TLC's version. They spend most of the show pretty much bashing the Amish way of life.
Right. It's picking on a defenseless population in the sense that they aren't going to be seeing this show, so they can't even make a comment on, hey, actually, that's not accurate.
Yeah, reality TV has a really long history of picking on people who are no match for these giant networks. And there's always sort of this element of exploitation, unless you're, Kim Kardashian. I think they're doing all right there.
Yeah. Tell me more about these 6 English contestants who come onto the show and how they are shown as interacting with the Amish population.
First and foremost, they all start off the show really interested or supposedly interested in joining an Amish community.
Modern life is exhausting. Having a chance to live a simpler life like the Amish, hell yeah.
I want to be Amish because I love that lifestyle. I love the traditional sense.
I don't like that I wake up, the first thing I do is get on Instagram.
The only problem is that none of them really seem to have much of a handle on what being Amish actually entails.
Yes.
Because they are shocked at every turn, you know, when they have to remove fake nails and eyelashes, when they have to
use an outhouse.
Yeah.
Gosh, we left a completely different world.
This is a huge culture shock for me.
It feels like chill.
They're not going to make it.
Of course, this is a show that was cast and produced for maximum explosive drama, which means that the people that they cast, they all have something that is going to be holding them back. One person is divorced, which means that in the Amish church, she can never remarry. One person is a professional dancer and a previous OnlyFans model. There's somebody who's bisexual. There's somebody who relies on hearing aids that work through his cell phone. So everybody's coming in with some sort of baggage or barrier that's going to make it really difficult for them to completely conform to the Amish way of living.
And provide the perfect platform for the show to present the Amish as judgmental and unfair with their reaction to each of these traits of the 6 contestants.
Yeah, it really sets both groups up for failure. It was really treated and really talked about as this self-growth opportunity and this amazing experience. And really this vacation into an Amish way of living that would make them better and stronger and braver and bolder. It's also something that we see a lot in rural media is rural communities are seen as this place of refuge, this place of peace, this place of healing that is useful insofar as it gets our characters back on their feet, ready to go out back into the quote unquote real world.
It's definitely an interesting television experience, but as we hope you've gotten from this conversation, a bit problematic in its representation.
Just a little bit.
But you all can decide how you feel about the show. You can watch Suddenly Amish on HBO Max or on TLC Go.
What do you think, Susanna? Will there be a season 2?
If there's a season 2, I would hope that the contestants have done a little more research into what Amish lifestyle actually is.
Let us hope.
Well, thank you so much, Anya Patron-Slepian and Susanna Brown. Next up on Yonder Radio, we're talking about working from home. Daily Yonder reporter Julia Tilton sat down with Daily Yonder data editor Sarah Malott to talk about remote workers in rural and urban places. As it turns out, rural recreation communities, think your ski resort and river rafting towns, are hubs for working from home. But as Sarah explains, the people who work from home in these recreation hotspots aren't necessarily working in recreation because it's, well, hard to raft in your living room. Here's Sarah and Julia to break it down.
Sarah, for this story, you dug into a 2023 American Community Survey, which is an annual study led by the U.S. Census Bureau. And you analyzed how remote workers vary between rural and urban or suburban workers. So I'm curious what you found. Are more people working from home in rural areas or in metro ones?
I found that overall, there's a greater share of remote workers in metro areas than there are in rural areas. If you just look at the entire country and you don't break things down by region or economic type or anything like that, there's about 14% of the metro workforce that says they work from home and about 8% of rural residents who say they work from home. The data that I just cited is from the 2018 to 2023 5-year estimates.
I know that for this story, you also looked at how remote workers in rural places vary pretty significantly by their region and industry. What did you find there?
When we zoomed in to look at industry, rural counties that have tourism-driven economies, or what I call recreation counties, the share of the population that works remotely is actually quite higher than the general rural population. Some of these counties, remote workers make up more than a quarter of all workers. This doesn't mean necessarily that remote workers are employed in recreation-related jobs. It's more likely an indication that places with lots of recreation amenities attract people who can work remotely because they have the flexibility.
In my neck of the woods, I'm in Maine, there are quite a few ski towns, ski-dependent communities in the northern parts of New England, folks that have sometimes second homes or that have moved from their office jobs in Boston, the nearby metro area, to the woods in New Hampshire or northern Maine. Is that what you're talking about here, that these are folks that are working from home for maybe places outside of their community, but are filed away as remote workers in these rural communities.
The data doesn't break down whether their remote job is in the community in which they live or it's outside of it, so we don't actually know, but if I had to take a guess, I'd say that's probably true. I'm glad that you brought up New England because in this story, I talk about how places in New England and Western states, particularly Rocky Mountain areas that also have lots of ski resorts, had the greatest percentage of remote workers compared to other regions. 15% of workers in Western states and rural recreation economies work from home, and 13% in New England. And so that's a significant share of the workforce in these places.
We'll be curious how the trends change as we get more years of data. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
That was Daily Yonder data editor Sarah Malott speaking with Daily Yonder reporter Julia Tilton on rural versus urban working from home. And next up, we got another tune from musical guest Eliza Blue. The single is titled Every Song's a Love Song Now. It's the finale of Eliza's folk opera, The Grass Widow. The song is about the moment that the Grass Widow realizes not only that she loves the prairie, but that the prairie loves her back.
How could I have known you'd be waiting here for me across an ocean of grass, across my sea of disbelief? And I'll admit that I was lost, and then I'd wandered for too long, and then found you in the fields, and then I found you in the barn, in the lamb's curling wool, in the hay still green and sweet, in the dust and in the dirt, in the first full blush of spring. Every song's a love song now. Every song I sing's for you. When I found you, I had nothing, nothing, nothing. And I have leaves and stems and roots. When I found you, I had nothing, nothing, nothing. And I have leaves and stems and roots. Now I have leaves and stems and roots.
Every song's a love song now. That is Eliza Blue on Yonder Radio, Rural Conversations with National Reach. My name is Jared Ewey, and now we're going to float down the Hudson River as the mighty waterway that flows from the Adirondack Mountains to the tip of Manhattan in New York City is awesome. But it has a long legacy of contamination. Daily Yonder reporters Alana Newman and Julia Tilton canoed 50 miles down the river to hear from the rural communities who are often left out of the Hudson story. And Alana, I am giddy. I can barely contain myself because of how you got this story, which we're going to get to. I think telling the story of how you got the story is as impressive as the story. After fighting for clean waters, rural communities along Hudson take on climate change. Just in the first caption, there is this phrase you'd think would have us all running to take action. It says, people who are or can become pregnant are recommended to never eat fish out of the Hudson River. Seems like a green light to do some things. You get up to the Hudson River with Julia Tilton to tell this story. What happened? Why is the water so bad?
The Hudson is such an interesting case study in pollution and pollution cleanup. The river was so polluted in the 60s and 70s from industry on the river, and the Hudson River is kind of the artery of New York. It's connecting these rural communities upstream to New York City. And there was no legislation that protected water until the Clean Water Act. And the Hudson was actually one of the catalysts for the Clean Water Act. The folk singer Pete Seeger built a boat called the Clearwater and sailed it to DC to deliver petitions in support of the Clean Water Act, telling the story of the Hudson, how polluted it was. That history of environmental activism still is the bedrock of the Hudson River. And while the river was cleaned up, it still is dealing with a lot of pollution from current factories and mining and manufacturing that's happening along the riverbanks today. 200 miles of the river are a Superfund site that was declared in 1984 and is still one of the largest Superfund sites in the US. And that's not even to get into some of the climate change issues that the river is facing. So there's still a lot of environmental activism that's happening around the Hudson River.
Okay, totally new verb here. You and Julia seagered along the river for many days. And while your first statement there may have built a barrier to optimism, I have a feeling that you were able to do some silver lining mining to find a story of improvement.
Everyone we talk to is really focused on what can happen in the future and how we can continue to monitor the river, continue to clean it up. It feels like communities are turning back towards the river. They're trying to make the waterfront a focus of their community development instead of turning away from the river, which was the case for a really long time. A lot of people didn't have their houses facing the river. We heard this term like backdoor river a lot, seeing the river as a dump, a place to dispose of waste that is not worth using for recreation or beauty. And that's really changing.
Yeah, I mean, you can see backdoor river going from exploitative to, oh, that's actually in our back door, so we need to care for that.
Exactly. And yet that embracing of the river comes with its own drawbacks, as there's a lot of potential sea level rise that will affect the river because the Hudson River is a tidal estuary. So anything that happens in the Atlantic Ocean also influences the lower 200 miles of the river up until Troy, New York, which is where the dam is. In Kingston, New York, people were telling us about areas that they wouldn't drive through when the roads were flooded in front of the wastewater plants. And that was another thing, that there's a lot of issues with wastewater plants flooding and potentially polluting the river. And that's just going to get worse as climate change develops and storms get worse and sea levels rise.
To simplify our ecological connectivity, things that happen in the Atlantic Ocean don't stay in the Atlantic Ocean.
Now they go 200 miles into New York.
Okay, now that you mentioned 200 miles, a journey, I just need to know some insight here. You and Julia Tilton were sent away on how many days on this river on a canoe?
We spent about 5 days on the river in a canoe, one of which had a hole in the bottom of it. And canoes are not the most aerodynamic of vessels. So we were battling the tides and the winds.
So one of you would sleep while the other paddled?
Yes, we did one night paddle in which 3 people were in a boat and 1 person was sleeping as we paddled from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
That is incredible. You do not have to put forth that much effort to learn about the Hudson River and what it's been through and what can help it, and those that are doing it. You can simply go to dailyyonder.com. So much information, and the article is, after fighting for clean waters, rural communities along Hudson take on climate change.
And you can see some photos of our night paddle and read more about our experience paddling down the river in the article as well.
Thank you so much, Ilana, for taking the journey and sharing it. I am heartened that there are journalists who are out there still able to do what's necessary to tell the story. So thank you so much for that.
Hopefully more river-based reporting coming soon.
We're all in the same boat. That was Daily Yonder reporter Ilana Newman, and what an incredible journey to tell that story. Before we go to break, we've got another trivia clue for you. This sporting event features unusual competitions like steer decorating and goat dressing. We have another hint coming up and your answer at the end of the show, but before then, we're going to talk about reviving and preserving the Cherokee language. That's coming up on Yonder Radio. This is Yonder Radio, Rural Conversations with National Reach. My name is Jared Iwi, and thanks for being with us. This is a Living Traditions story. Living Traditions is a program of the Center for Rural Strategies that looks at folk life in Central Appalachia, and today's story takes us to western North Carolina, where the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is working to preserve the Cherokee language. Their dialect of Cherokee is considered severely endangered. To help revitalize the language, community leaders opened the new Katua Academy in 2004. It's a Cherokee language immersion school for elementary-age students, and a partnership with a printmaking instructor at Western Carolina University is bringing beautiful, hand-printed classroom materials to the Cherokee language learners. Reporter Anya Patron-Slepian brings us the story.
At the entrance to the new Katua Academy in Cherokee, North Carolina, a big red sign reads "English stops here." The elementary school is a Cherokee language immersion program. Classes, lunch, and after-school activities are conducted primarily in Cherokee, and the school's books, maps, and diagrams are full of the 85 symbols that make up the Cherokee syllabary. Dr. Hartwell Francis is the curriculum developer for the school.
I guess you can think about it as guarding treasure. A language is a community's greatest cultural creation, and it has all of their wisdom packed into it in different ways.
Though the Cherokee language has been spoken for thousands of years, it has been considered critically endangered since the beginning of the 21st century. This was no accident. From the 1860s until the mid-1900s, federal law required Native American children to attend boarding schools. These schools were created to force assimilation and weaken indigenous cultural ties. They required that students speak English, and staff punished students for speaking their native languages.
The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians realized that the language was gravely endangered. They decided to create the immersion school to deal with the problem of the loss of the Cherokee language.
For the last 20 years, the Katua Preservation and Education Program has been revitalizing the Cherokee language by teaching it to new generations. The new Katua Academy teaches students from preschool through the 6th grade. Access to Cherokee language learning materials is critical for the school's immersion program, but such materials are not widely available.
One of the things that you realize when you start working with a language of a small population is there are often no materials or very few materials. And also, a lot of the materials aren't very pretty.
That means the school staff has had to get creative. 4 years ago, Francis approached Tatiana Potts, a printmaking and book arts professor at Western Carolina University, with an idea: to hand-print Cherokee language materials that could be used in the classroom of the new Katua Academy. Potts, who is from Slovakia and grew up speaking multiple languages, embraced the project immediately.
I come from a different country, and I grew up with Czech and Slovak. We had to study Russian. I learned English, and I feel like when you study different language, it's just like the door was open to a new world, new experience.
In the university's printmaking studio, Potts explains the structure for this semester's book, which is about the creatures of Cherokee legends.
For you, you're gonna have just one word. For some of you, it will be like 3 kind of characters. Some of you will have a...
The bookmaking process is collaborative. Each semester, Francis and a group of adult Cherokee language learners decide the book topic and write the text in Cherokee syllabary. Then the college students design sketches and submit them to Francis and the Cherokee learners, who critique the sketches from a cultural and artistic perspective.
Did they get the creature in the Cherokee way? Does this resonate with the Cherokee culture? Kind of critique of the art of the sketches. And then the students, they really take that to heart. They appreciate that criticism. And they come back with much better work, for their final prints.
Most of Potts's printmaking students are not Indigenous, so the cultural research they do helps them analyze their own worldviews and default assumptions. For example, a book that goes through a day in the life of a Cherokee person prompted discussions about how characters should be drawn.
Let's say he's a swimmer. Should we do the gender? Should we do the color of the skin? So how are we going to relate completely to culture of Cherokee so the children can see themselves?
One page depicting a Cherokee garden shows the 3 sisters, corns, beans, and squash, 3 crops that are traditionally grown together.
This student, for example, they do research and they looked up what actually is meaningful, of what would you find in their garden. So it is learning experience.
Let's see. That one's nice, huh? Awishana Dagila Wistane. I work in my garden.
Once the art is approved, the students screen print 10 copies of their sketches. In the studio's darkroom, Pot shows her students how to coat their silk screens with emulsion. She pulls the thick, light pink liquid over the screen with a large squeegee.
You want to press? When you're on top, you tip it back down.
Once all the pages are printed, Potts and a select group of students glue and bind those pages into 10 limited edition books. At the elementary school, the books are used to support a range of subjects, from science and art to social studies. Because the books are handmade with New Kituwa Cherokee learners in mind, the elementary-age students have a unique chance to see themselves and their community represented in their school materials. For example, one book focused on local architecture includes important buildings in the Cherokee community.
It looks like the post office here in town instead of some random, cliche post office.
We can create connection through making the image and making them happy about what we're creating, and then making it beneficial for children to be excited to maintain this language. So I think there's really good discoveries through these kind of connections.
The book's contents, as well as the language they're written in, support the critical mission of the New Kituwa Academy.
There's a very cultural need to have Cherokee language, to keep the poetry of Cherokee language alive, the literature of Cherokee language alive.
Keeping a language alive and kids feeling represented in their education and creating some beautiful art too. So many great things in one story. Thank you so much, Anya Patron-Slepian, for that Living Traditions piece from North Carolina. The lovely music, by the way, that was from Jarrett Wildcat. So a special thanks to him as well. So next up, we have a conversation between Daily Yonder reporter Julia Tilton and one of Maine's first oyster farmers turned electric boat drivers. His name, Willie Leathers. Now, Julia, you got to take a ride on Leathers' boat last summer. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So last summer in August of 2025, Willie Leathers took me out to his aquaculture operation where he grows 3 million oysters. It's called Maine Ocean Farms, and we visited it aboard a 28-foot aluminum boat that runs on 2 100% electric motors. The boat's called Heron, and it splashed into Casco Bay on southern Maine's coast in July 2025.
And this journey is circuitous. Like, this isn't just ocean water. There's bureaucracies, there's federal dollars, there's a lot of partners. Tell us about this.
Yeah, Leather's new boat is part of a $500,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Energy, and his farm, Maine Ocean Farms, is an early adopter of this kind of electric boating technology, which basically lets them work out the kinks with operating a battery-powered boat in Maine's cold winters and with limited charging infrastructure on the relatively rural coastline.
These are the stories we love to hear. Innovators at sea. And here is Julia with Willie Leathers on the coast of Maine.
What made you decide to go electric, and how did you know that was something you could do?
So the decision to kind of jump in and do this pilot project with electric propulsion really stretches back to our desire to always be looking ahead and trying to push the boundary of innovation and how that fits with our operations and efficiencies. And for us, it was the right time to add another boat to the fleet in terms of scale and capacity and capabilities. And we had a lot of options. But as this project came together, we had the opportunity to design and see something that we felt like would suit our really specific needs. And being willing to say, if electric propulsion is something that seems like it's out there on the horizon, why don't we bring it in close and actually try it and come back with the data and the experiences and the stories to say, does this or doesn't this work for the style of business we have and where the industry may or may not be going in the future.
What are some of the advantages of having an electric outboard versus a gas-powered outboard?
For us, one of the biggest aspects is that our boats are our workplaces. And so between myself or the staff that's out there, we're out there for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, operating things. So reducing noise and reducing on-site emissions is a goal of not only improving the workplace, but also improving our potential impact on the environment around us. And then from the sense that we're raising a crop, anything that we can do to mitigate risks of potential hazards or contamination through things like having a fuel spill or something like that is a great step in the right direction.
The term working waterfront has come up a couple of times today. Can you talk about that and what that term means?
The term working waterfront is definitely a really powerful one because it encompasses the fact that a lot of people turn to the water in a sense of recreation and passive enjoyment, not necessarily going out and envisioning that being a workplace. We're used to fishing, which is a really different concept than aquaculture, where you have a long-term invested interest in a crop and a particular product. Our oysters take about 3 years to grow, so the husbandry aspects of that mean that we're caring for, tending, and cultivating a particular product for 3 years before it ends up getting culled, harvested, and taken to market to be consumed. So the working part is really that this is the place that both our crop lives and thrives, as well as where our employees go, our infrastructure is. Us taking our boat from this pier and driving out is just like taking the tractor out of the barn and heading to the field.
That was Oysterman Willie Leathers, interviewed by Daily Yonder reporter Julia Tilton in South Freeport, Maine in August 2025. Just think about this. These are tractors for oysters that don't need diesel. And a couple updates here. Since Leathers spoke with Julia last summer, the crew has been working hard to prove that electric boats can work for aquaculture in Maine. The idea, Julia tells me, is that if the technology can work in the harsh, cold, and remote waters of Casco Bay, Maine, it can probably work anywhere. But now here's a bonus update. Part of the challenge is finding a place to charge the boat. Not every harbor or wharf has enough of the right kind of power to juice up the boat's battery. But in November 2025, Julia caught up with Leathers again at the official commissioning of a charging port in Portland, Maine, about 20 miles south of where Maine Ocean Farms grows its oysters. For Leathers, this means that the boat, Heron, can now literally go from farm to table to deliver fresh oysters to Portland's seafood restaurants without needing a tow back to the farm. And that is, people, and excuse me for this, that is a sea change in the aquaculture industry. Well, are you ready for the final trivia hint this week? After this hint, we'll be revealing the answer, so here we go. This event breaks down traditional barriers between men and women, with men able to compete as barrel racers and women as bull riders. Do you have the answer in your head? The answer is, drum roll please, gay rodeo. For 50 years, gay rodeos have taken place across the United States and Canada. Gay rodeos include classic rough stock and timed rodeo events, as well as camp events like Wild Drag Race, in which a competitor in drag races to mount an uncooperative steer with some support from teammates. All competitors are eligible to compete in every gay rodeo event, regardless of gender. Gay rodeos also expand upon the mainstream rodeo royalty court, with an elected man, woman, drag queen, and drag king each serving as members of the court. According to historian Nicholas Villanueva Jr., gay rodeo has been especially meaningful for queer people from rural, southern, and western places who don't see themselves or their lives represented in urban queer spaces like New York or San Francisco. Last year, there were more than 10,000 spectators at the World Gay Rodeo Finals in Reno, Nevada. Find out if there may be a gay rodeo competition near you at igra.com. Well, if you hear me tearing up, it's because we did it again. Another episode of Yonder Radio. A lot of hard work has been put into this, and thank you to all the people across the country that we talk to and share their stories. You can learn more and listen at yonderradio.com. Thank you for listening to Yonder Radio, a production of the Center for Rural Strategies, publisher of the Daily Yonder. I'm your host, Jared Iwi. Our editor and producer is Susanna Brown. This episode was also produced by Julia Tilton, with additional support from Anya Patron-Slepian and Alana Newman. Our executive producer is Joel Cohen. The executive in charge of production is Adam Georgie. The Living Tradition segment was produced by Nicole Musgrave. Thanks to Don Castle and the Tennessee Sheiks, Steph Gunno, and the Lone Tones, Quincy Ponfair, Leo Pozell, and Tim Merima for the great music. Yonder Radio, rural conversations with national reach.